Billionaire left his wife not knowing she's pregnant. 12 years later, she arrived with the twins and changed everything. You chose your company over our marriage. Harriet's voice cut through the office like a blade. And now you want to waltz back into my life, meet the children you knew nothing about, and play father. You don't get to do that, Liam. You don't get to choose wrong, and then ask for a second chance when it's convenient for you. Liam Mateo stood frozen, his face pale. I know I chose wrong. I've known that for 12 years. But Harriet, those children out there, they're mine, aren't they? They're our children. Biologically, yes. Harriet's eyes were ice. In every other way that matters, that remains to be seen. Because fatherhood isn't about DNA. It's about showing up. And you, Liam Mateo, have a terrible track record with showing up when it actually matters. But let me take you back to where this all started. To the night everything changed. To the concert hall in Seattle, where 12 years of secrets were about to explode. The concert hall went dark, and Harriet George stood in the wings with the kind of stillness that comes from years of performing under pressure. Around her, the energy hummed with anticipation, 2,000 people settling into their seats, programs rustling, the orchestra tuning, the particular electricity that exists only in those moments before music transforms air into emotion. She wore black, always black for opening nights. A silk dress that moved like water when she walked, cut simply but expensively. Her auburn hair was swept up to reveal the silver cuff earrings she'd designed herself, small acts of creation that grounded her before the larger act of bringing a symphony to life. At 39, Harriet had learned that confidence wasn't something you felt. It was something you wore like armor until it became real. Tonight wasn't just another performance. Tonight was the premiere of Resilience, her symphony that had taken 3 years to compose. Every major arts patron in Seattle was in that audience. Critics from New York and Los Angeles, musicians she'd studied under, donors who funded her music education foundation. This performance would define the next phase of her career. And somewhere in that darkness, in a seat he'd purchased just 2 hours ago, sat Liam Mateo. She hadn't known he would be there until her assistant had mentioned it casually, unaware she was detonating a bomb. Last-minute ticket purchase from Mateo Technologies, 5th row center. The name had hit Harriet like a physical blow. 12 years of carefully constructed armor suddenly feeling paper thin. 5 minutes, Ms. George. The stage manager's whisper cut through her thoughts. Harriet nodded, her fingers unconsciously moving through the opening measures of the second movement. Muscle memory grounding her when emotions threatened to unravel everything she'd built. Her hands knew this music, had written it, had conducted it through dozens of rehearsals. Her body would carry her through even if her mind was stuck on the reality that Liam Mateo was sitting in her audience. 12 years. 12 years since she'd walked away from San Francisco, from the life they'd been building, from the man who'd chosen his company's survival over their marriage. 12 years since she'd discovered she was pregnant in a Denver hotel room, alone and shattered, deciding in that moment that some people didn't deserve to know they'd created life. Mama? The voice came from behind her, and Harriet turned to find both twins hovering in the corridor, technically not supposed to be backstage but impossible to keep away when their mother was performing. Nora stood there in the emerald dress she'd insisted on wearing despite Harriet's suggestion of something more understated. At 11, she already had opinions about everything and the confidence to voice them. Her dark eyes, Liam's eyes, though Harriet tried not to notice, watched her mother with the kind of concern no 11-year-old should have to carry. Beside her, Julian fidgeted with his tie, his auburn hair, her hair, thank God for small mercies, falling into his face despite 3 attempts to style it properly. You're not supposed to be here, Harriet said, but without heat. We wanted to wish you luck, Julian said, before you go out there and make everyone cry with your music. That's the goal, Harriet replied, crouching to their level despite the designer dress. But I don't need luck. I have something better. What's that? Nora asked, her perceptiveness picking up on something beneath her mother's words. I have the knowledge that whatever happens out there, I come home to you two. That's armor against anything. It was more honesty than she usually allowed herself, especially right before a performance. But knowing Liam was sitting somewhere in that darkened audience had stripped away her usual careful control. She couldn't quite catch her breath. Couldn't quite convince herself this was just another premiere. Is something wrong? Nora pressed, reading her mother the way she read complex sheet music, with an intuition that went beyond her years. You seem different. Worried, maybe. Just nervous. Harriet lied. and watched her daughter's expression shift to skepticism. Big night. Important performance. You're never nervous, Julian countered, crossing his arms in a gesture he'd picked up from her. You're the calmest person I know. You told us that nerves are just excitement wearing the wrong costume. So, what's actually wrong? Before Harriet could formulate an answer that was honest without being devastating, her assistant appeared, clipboard in hand and urgency in her voice. Ms. George, they're ready for you. The orchestra is in position. We need you on stage. Harriet kissed both twins on the forehead, breathing in the scent of the fancy shampoo they'd used for tonight, grounding herself in them, in the life she'd built from absolutely nothing when she'd had every reason to crumble. Get back to your seats. Elena's waiting for you. And remember, we know, they said in unison, a twin thing they'd been doing since they could talk. Phones off, no talking, clap between movements but not during. Perfect. Harriet stood, smoothing her dress. I love you both. We love you too, Nora said, then added with the intensity that characterized everything she did. Now go make art, Mama. The kind that changes people. Walking onto that stage required every ounce of composure Harriet had spent 12 years cultivating. The stage lights hit her as she emerged from the wings, and she could feel the audience's attention shift. Hundreds of eyes watching her take her position at the conductor's podium. The orchestra before her, instruments ready. The particular quality of silence that exists only in concert halls, thick with expectation. Somewhere in that darkness sat Liam Mateo, the man she'd loved enough to marry. The man who'd shattered her so completely, she'd spent 3 years unable to compose a single note. The man who had no idea he'd fathered 2 extraordinary children. She couldn't see him. The stage lights made the audience invisible, but she could feel his presence the way you feel a storm coming, pressure building in the air. Harriet raised her baton. The orchestra straightened, eyes on her. She took a breath, let everything else fall away. The only thing that mattered now was the music. Her music. Born from heartbreak and survival, from late nights nursing infants while sketching melodies, from the slow understanding that devastation could be transmuted into art if you were willing to do the painful work of feeling everything you tried to bury. The baton came down. The music began. Resilience was divided into 4 movements: fracture, wilderness, rebuilding, and becoming. She'd poured 12 years of her life into these compositions. Every measure a meditation on survival. Every crescendo a declaration that she'd made it through. The strings opened with a melody that sounded like breaking, dissonant and painful. The woodwinds answered with something that might have been grief. The brass punctuated with the sharp sounds of things ending. This was the fracture, the moment when everything you thought was solid reveals itself to be fragile. When the person you trusted most chooses something else. When you have to decide whether to crumble or reconstruct yourself from the pieces. Harriet conducted with her whole body, drawing the emotion from the orchestra. She could hear people in the audience shifting, breath-catching. Good. That meant they were listening, really listening, not just hearing notes but feeling the story beneath them. The second movement, Wilderness, began with a solo cello, the loneliest sound in music. It spoke of wandering, of being lost, of those months in Denver when she'd been pregnant and terrified and completely alone, when every day had been about survival, not living, just making it to the next morning. The melody was sparse, searching, occasionally finding brief moments of beauty before descending back into uncertainty. By the third movement, Harriet could hear people crying, the soft sounds of emotion that meant the music was doing its work, reaching past intellectual appreciation into the raw, vulnerable places where art lives. Rebuilding began with percussion, rhythmic and insistent, the sound of work, of choosing to continue, of small victories, feeding twins at 3 a.m, finishing a composition despite exhaustion, getting a commission, building a foundation, brick by brick, note by note, reconstructing a life, and then becoming. The final movement. This was triumph, but not simple triumph. It acknowledged the scars. The music carried traces of the earlier movements, fragments of breaking and wandering woven into something new. The melody soared, but remained grounded. Joy earned through survival. Strength that came from having been shattered and choosing to be whole anyway. When the final note faded, the silence stretched for 3 perfect heartbeats. The kind of silence that is itself a form of applause. the audience holding its breath because the music has transported them somewhere profound and they need a moment to return. Then the applause erupted, the entire audience rising to their feet, the sound rolling over her like a physical force, the orchestra turning to her smiling, adding their applause. This was success. Recognition. Everything she'd worked for. But Harriet barely heard it, because in that moment, scanning the crowd as she took her bow, she saw him. Liam Mateo stood in the 5th row, and even from this distance, even after 12 years, she could read the expression on his face. Shock, recognition, wonder, and something that looked devastatingly like grief. Their eyes met across the concert hall, and the world tilted. Everything she'd carefully buried rose to the surface. The love she'd felt, the betrayal that had nearly destroyed her, the choice she'd made to build a life without him, the children he didn't know existed. 12 years collapsed into a single moment of eye contact. Harriet forced herself to look away, to bow to the audience, to acknowledge the orchestra, to be professional, even though her heart was trying to escape her chest. When she finally exited the stage, she could barely feel her legs. She didn't go to the reception immediately. Instead, Harriet found a quiet dressing room and sat there in her concert blacks, hands shaking in a way they never did during performances. Her reflection in the mirror showed composure. But inside, she was 17 different kinds of chaos. He was here, in Seattle, at her premiere. Had he known? Had he come specifically to see her, or was it coincidence? And more importantly, what was she going to do when she had to face him at the reception? Mama? Nora's voice at the door, tentative. The reception starting. Everyone wants to meet you. They're saying your symphony is going to redefine contemporary classical music. Harriet took a breath, rebuilt her armor piece by careful piece, the way she'd learned to do. I'm coming, sweetheart. Just needed a moment. Are you okay? Nora asked, slipping into the room. You seem shaky. I'm fine. Harriet lied, standing and smoothing her dress, just the adrenaline wearing off. Performances always leave me a little unsteady. Julian appeared behind his sister, studying his mother with the analytical attention he brought to everything. You saw someone in the audience, someone who upset you. Sometimes Harriet forgot how perceptive her children were. They'd spent their entire lives reading her moods, learning to navigate the world through her responses. Of course they'd noticed her reaction. I saw someone I used to know, she said carefully. A long time ago, before you were born. It was surprising, that's all. Was it our father? Nora asked bluntly, and the question landed like a bomb in the small room. Harriet stared at her daughter. Why would you ask that? Because you never talk about him, Nora said, which means he's important, and you only get that look, the scared one, when something really important is happening. So I figured it must be him. Out of the mouths of children. Harriet had always promised herself she'd be honest with them, even when honesty was complicated. Yes, she admitted. It was him, Liam Mateo. He bought a ticket this afternoon. I didn't know he'd be here. Are you going to talk to him? Julian asked. I imagine he'll want to talk to me, Harriet said, which means we need to be prepared. You might meet him tonight, and if you do, I need you to understand something. He doesn't know about you. I never told him I was pregnant. Why not? Nora's voice carried genuine curiosity, not judgment, because when I found out I was pregnant, he was already gone. He'd chosen to leave for a business opportunity that was more important to him than our marriage. And I decided that you deserved better than a father who might show up sometimes when it was convenient. I wanted to build you a stable life, even if it meant building it alone. But now he's here, Julian observed. So what happens? Now we deal with it honestly, Harriet said, crouching to their level. If he approaches us, if he asks questions, I'll tell him the truth. And then we'll figure out what comes next together. But I need you both to know that whatever happens, whatever he says or does, our life doesn't change unless we want it to. You are loved and safe, and nothing can take that away. Understood? Understood, they said together. The reception was held in the concert hall's atrium, all soaring glass and carefully curated champagne. Donors and critics and fellow musicians filled the space, everyone wanting to congratulate her, to discuss the symphony's emotional architecture, to ask about her creative process. Harriet answered on autopilot, professional and gracious, while part of her awareness tracked Liam's location across the room. He stood near the windows, holding a glass of wine he didn't seem to be drinking, watching her, waiting. Elena appeared at her elbow, the twins in tow. "You were magnificent," her best friend said, and the genuine warmth in her voice helped settle some of Harriet's nerves. "Everyone's talking about how resilience is going to redefine contemporary classical music." The Times critic actually had tears on his face. "They're being generous," Harriet demurred. "They're being accurate," Elena countered, then lowered her voice. "Also, there's someone here who keeps staring at you with an expression that suggests he's seen a ghost. Tall, expensive suit, looks like he walked out of a tech magazine cover. Should I be concerned?" Before Harriet could answer, Liam was there, crossing the space between them with the purposeful stride of someone who'd spent 12 years building the courage for this moment. Up close, Harriet could see exactly how time had touched him. At 40, he'd aged in the way wealthy men do, which is to say, barely at all. His dark hair showed just enough silver at the temples to suggest wisdom without age. His suit was bespoke, probably Italian. His posture, perfect. But his eyes carried something new, a weight that hadn't been there 12 years ago. "Harriet," he said, and his voice was exactly as she remembered. Warm, intelligent, carrying that slight rasp that had once made her weak. "That was extraordinary. I don't have words. Your symphony, it was like watching someone's soul set to music." "Thank you," she replied, years of professional performance allowing her to sound calm when her heart was a wild thing trying to escape her chest. Liam's eyes moved to the twins, who were watching this exchange with the careful attention children develop when they sense adult tension. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, calculation, dawning realization, shock. "These are," he began, his voice catching. "My children," Harriet finished firmly, her hand moving to rest on Nora's shoulder. "Nora and Julian. They're 11. She watched him do the math, watched his face pale as he counted backward. 11 years old, which meant 12 years ago, right when their marriage had imploded, right when he left for Singapore, right when she discovered she was pregnant. "They're mine," he said, and it wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact delivered with the kind of certainty that comes from seeing your own features reflected in small faces. "Biologically, yes," Harriet said coolly. "In every other way that matters, that remains to be seen." "Can we talk?" Liam asked quietly, his eyes pleading. "Privately. Please, Harriet. I need to understand. 12 years. You kept this from me for 12 years. Now isn't the time," Harriet said, her voice carrying an edge. "This is a professional event. I have donors and critics and responsibilities." "Then when? Tomorrow? Please. I need to know why. I need to know them." Before Harriet could refuse, Nora spoke up. "Are you a friend of Mama's?" Liam looked at his daughter, their daughter, and something in his expression cracked open. "I was. A long time ago. We were very close." "What happened?" Julian asked with the bluntness that was his trademark. "Did you have a fight?" "Something like that," Liam said carefully, glancing at Harriet for guidance she didn't offer. "We made different choices about our lives, and those choices meant we couldn't be together anymore. Adults always say things like that when the truth is complicated," Nora observed, crossing her arms. "We're 11, not babies. We can handle complicated." Despite everything, Harriet felt a smile threaten. Her children were fearless in ways she'd had to learn, ways she'd taught them to be by refusing to sugarcoat the world. "Tomorrow," she told Liam, making the decision before she could second-guess it. 10 o'clock. My office at the conservatory. We can talk then. But Liam, this conversation is going to be difficult and painful, and there's no version of it where you come out feeling good about yourself. I understand." He breathed, relief flooding his face. "Thank you. I'll be there." After he left, melting back into the crowd, Elena leaned close. "That's him, isn't it? The ex-husband, the one who chose Singapore. That's him. He looks devastated." "Good," Harriet said coldly. "He should be." But later that night, after the reception ended and the twins were asleep in the car on the drive home, Harriet allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Liam knew. After 12 years of carefully constructed separation, he knew about the twins. And tomorrow she'd have to explain why she'd kept them from him. Why she'd chosen to be a single mother rather than co-parent with a man who'd proven himself capable of choosing wrong. The truth was complicated. The truth was painful. The truth was that when she discovered she was pregnant, Alone in that Denver hotel room, she'd made a choice based on survival. She'd chosen certainty over chaos, stability over the possibility that Liam might be a good father. She'd chosen to protect her children from the kind of disappointment she'd experienced. Had it been the right choice? She didn't know. Wouldn't know until she saw what kind of man Liam had become in 12 years. Whether he'd learned anything, whether he'd changed, whether he was capable of being the father Nora and Julian deserved. At home, Elena helped her carry the sleeping twins inside. "You don't have to do this alone," Elena said as they tucked Nora into bed. "Tomorrow I can come with you. Moral support." "No," Harriet said. "This is something I need to face by myself. But thank you." "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Harriet admitted. "Not of him. Of what this means. Of disrupting the life we've built. Of the twins getting hurt if he can't follow through. Of having to share them after 11 years of them being completely mine. They'll always be yours," Elena said gently. "No matter what happens with him. You're the one who raised them, who made midnight feedings and school projects and scraped knees into a childhood. He's just biology. You're their mother in every way that counts." After Elena left, Harriet stood in the twins' doorway for a long moment, watching them sleep. Nora sprawled across her bed like she was trying to take up as much space as possible. Julian curled tight, even in sleep maintaining his careful boundaries. These two humans she'd built and raised, who somehow combined the best parts of her and Liam while being entirely their own people. They deserved a father. They deserved to know where they came from, to have access to that part of their identity, even if it meant Harriet had to face Liam regularly, had to keep old wounds from reopening, had to maintain professional courtesy with a man who'd shattered her heart so completely she'd spent 3 years certain she'd never let anyone close again. She could do it. She'd survived harder things. Harriet pulled out her phone and found a text from Liam waiting. "Thank you for tonight, for the symphony, for agreeing to talk. I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm grateful for it. I'll see you tomorrow at 10. She stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, "Bring questions. You're going to have a lot of them. And Liam, be prepared. The answers won't make you feel better." His response came immediately. "I don't expect to feel better. I expect to feel like I've made the worst mistake of my life. But I need to understand. I need to know them." Harriet set her phone down and tried to sleep, but her mind kept replaying moments from the evening. The shock on Liam's face when he saw the twins, the careful way he'd spoken to them, the genuine emotion in his voice when he'd asked to talk. And underneath it all, the painful awareness that this was the Liam she'd loved. Attentive, intelligent, capable of real connection. The man she'd thought she'd spent her life with before he'd chosen his company's survival over their marriage. But that was ancient history. What mattered now was the future. Specifically, whether Liam could be trusted with her children's hearts. Whether he'd follow through or disappoint them the way he'd disappointed her. Whether 12 years had taught him anything about what actually mattered. Time would tell. It always did. Harriet finally fell asleep around 2 in the morning, exhausted from performance and emotional labor. She dreamed of concert halls and choices, of children who asked impossible questions, of men who claimed to have changed but might still choose wrong when tested. Morning came too quickly. Harriet woke to find both twins already awake, sitting on her bed and watching her with identical expressions of concern. "Are you going to talk to him today?" Nora asked. "Our biological father." "Yes," Harriet said, sitting up. "This morning at my office." "Are you going to tell him about us?" Julian asked. "Like, actually tell him he's our dad?" "He already knows," Harriet said. "He figured it out last night when he saw you. The math isn't complicated. 11-year-old twins appearing 12 years after our marriage ended. What are you going to say to him?" Nora pressed. "The truth," Harriet replied, "that when I found out I was pregnant, I made a choice to build our life without him. That it wasn't about punishing him, it was about protecting you. That I don't regret it, even if it was complicated." "Are we going to meet him? Like, really meet him?" Julian asked. "That depends," Harriet said carefully. "On what he says today, on whether he's serious about wanting to know you, on whether I believe he can be trusted with your hearts. I won't let someone into your lives who might disappoint you or leave when things get difficult." "What if he's nice?" Nora asked. "What if we like him? Then we'll figure it out together," Harriet promised. but slowly, carefully. No one gets to disrupt what we've built just because biology says they have a claim. Family is earned, not demanded. He'll have to prove himself worthy of being your father in ways that go beyond DNA. The twins seemed satisfied with this answer. They scattered to get ready for the day, leaving Harriet alone with her thoughts and the approaching meeting that would reshape everything. At 9:30, Harriet arrived at the conservatory. Her office was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the courtyard where music students practiced at odd hours. It was filled with the evidence of her life, framed photographs of the twins at various ages, awards and reviews from performances around the world, shelves of scores she'd composed and collected, a space that declared who she'd become in the 12 years since Liam had last known her. She wanted him to see it, wanted him to understand exactly what she'd built while he'd been chasing his company's success, wanted him to confront the reality that she hadn't needed him, had thrived without him, had created a life that was full and meaningful and entirely hers. At exactly 10 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. "Come in," Harriet said, and watched Liam Mateo enter her office. He looked like he'd slept as poorly as she had. His suit was impeccable, but there were shadows under his eyes. He held 2 cups of coffee, a peace offering or perhaps an acknowledgement that this conversation would require caffeine. "I brought coffee," he said, offering one to her. "I remembered you take it black with 1 sugar." The fact that he remembered after 12 years felt both touching and painful. Harriet took the coffee. "Thank you. Sit." Liam sat in one of her office chairs, looking around at the evidence of her success. "You built an incredible life," he said quietly. "Everything you dreamed about in San Francisco, you did it all. The symphony, the foundation for music education, this position at the conservatory. It's extraordinary. I didn't have much choice," Harriet replied coolly. "It was succeed or drown, and I had 2 children depending on me. Failure wasn't an option." Liam flinched. "They're mine, aren't they? I know I said it last night, but I need to hear you confirm it. Nora and Julian. They're our children." "Biologically, yes," Harriet said. "Genetically, you contributed half their DNA. In every other way that matters, no. You're not their father. You're a stranger who happens to share some chromosomes." The words were harsh, deliberately so. Harriet watched them land, watched Liam absorb the blow. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice raw. 12 years, Harriet. 12 years I've had children in the world and didn't know. How could you keep that from me?" And there it was. The question she'd known was coming, the one she'd prepared for, but still wasn't quite ready to answer. Because answering meant reopening wounds she'd spent 12 years learning to live with. "You want to have this conversation?" Harriet asked, her voice carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. "Really have it? Because I can explain exactly why I didn't tell you, but it's not going to be pretty, and it's not going to make you feel better about yourself. Are you sure you want the truth?" "I deserve it," Liam said quietly. "Whatever you need to say, I deserve it." Harriet set down her coffee and stood, needing movement for what came next. She walked to the window, looking out at the courtyard, gathering 12 years of carefully managed anger. "You chose your company over our marriage," she said, her back still to him. "When the crisis came, when you had to decide between relocating to save your business or staying to save us, you chose the business. You asked me to wait 5 years. 5 years while you built your empire in Singapore, like I was something you could put on hold and come back to later. I thought we could survive the distance," Liam said. "I thought our marriage was strong enough." Harriet turned to face him. "You thought wrong. Or maybe you just didn't think about me at all. Maybe it was easier to assume I'd wait than to actually consider what you were asking me to sacrifice. I asked you to come with me. To Singapore?" Harriet's voice rose slightly. "Where I had no connections, no career prospects, no opportunities? Where I'd be completely dependent on you in a city I'd never even visited? You asked me to abandon my entire life on 12 days' notice because saving your company was more important than building something together. The company was our future." Liam protested. "No." Harriet cut him off, her voice like ice. "The company was your future. Our future was supposed to be partnership, building something together, making decisions together. But when it came down to it, when you had to choose between your dream and our marriage, you chose the dream. You chose success over me. And you didn't even have the decency to fight for us when I said no. I thought you'd understand," Liam said weakly. "I understood perfectly," Harriet replied, I understood that I wasn't your priority, that your work, your achievement, your legacy mattered more than the life we'd promised to build together. So, I left San Francisco. I filed for divorce from Denver, and you know what you did? You signed the papers. You sent them back with a lawyer. No phone call, no attempt to fix things. Just your signature releasing us both from promises you were apparently relieved to be rid of. That's not fair, Liam said. I was devastated. I was trying to respect your decision. You were trying to make yourself feel better about choosing wrong. Harriet countered. And when I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after those papers were signed, I made a choice. I decided that my children deserved better than a part-time father who might show up between board meetings when it was convenient. I decided they deserved stability and certainty instead of waiting around for someone who'd already proven he could choose wrong when it mattered. If I'd known you were pregnant, Liam began. What? Harriet interrupted. What would you have done differently? Commuted from Singapore on weekends? Sent money and called yourself involved? I didn't want that for them. I wanted them to have a parent who was all in, even if it meant being the only parent. So yes, I kept them from you. And I'd make the same choice again because look at them, Liam. Look at who they've become. They're brilliant and kind and confident because they've never had to wonder if they were important enough for their father to show up. The words hung between them, sharp and true. Liam looked like she'd physically struck him. His composure, that billionaire confidence, crumbled into something raw and painful. You're right, he said finally, about all of it. I was selfish and short-sighted, and I chose wrong. I lost you because I couldn't see past my own fear of failure. And I lost them before I even knew they existed. Yes, Harriet said simply. You did. What are their names? Liam asked, his voice thick with emotion. Their full names. I want to know everything. Harriet returned to her desk, pulling out her phone. She opened her photo album and turned it toward him. Nora Elizabeth George and Julian Alexander George, born March 16th. Nora plays violin like she's having a conversation with the universe. She reads everything, questions everything, feels everything deeply. Julian plays piano with perfect pitch, but he's obsessed with mathematics and how music and numbers intersect. They're both brilliant and stubborn and completely themselves. Liam stared at the photos, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the phone. Can I? Harriet nodded, watching as he scrolled through years of images. First birthdays and first days of school. Halloween costumes and Christmas mornings. Music recitals and random Tuesday afternoons that had been deemed photo-worthy. 12 years of life he'd missed, documented in thousands of small moments. They're perfect, he whispered. They look like both of us. Nora has my eyes. Julian has your hair. They're absolutely perfect. They are, Harriet agreed, which is why I kept them away from you for 12 years, because I needed to make sure they stayed that way, whole and secure and certain of their worth. I couldn't risk someone coming in and making them feel like they weren't enough. The indictment hung in the air. Liam set the phone down carefully, his eyes wet. What changed? He asked. Why tell me now? You could have kept them hidden forever. I never would have known. Harriet sat back down, suddenly exhausted. I didn't plan to tell you, but you showed up at my premiere. You saw them. They're smart enough to know something significant was happening. And the truth is, they deserve to know their father, not because you deserve to know them, but because they have a right to understand where they come from, to have access to that part of their identity. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. Whether you deserve to be in their lives is something we'll determine over time, based on your actions, not your words, based on whether you can prove yourself capable of sustained commitment to something other than your company's bottom line. I want to know them, Liam said immediately. Really know them. I want to be their father in every way that matters. Tell me what I need to do to make that possible. I'll do anything. Before Harriet could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Elena. The twins are asking about the man from last night. What should I tell them? Harriet showed Liam the text. They're asking about you. They're too smart to be fooled by vague explanations or adult diplomacy. So before this goes any further, I need to know, are you serious about this? Because if you commit and then change your mind 6 months from now when fatherhood gets complicated or boring or inconvenient, you'll devastate them. I won't allow that. I understand, Liam said, his voice steady despite the emotion. And I promise you, I won't let them down the way I let you down. Pretty words, Harriet observed. But I've heard your pretty words before. They didn't mean much when you were boarding a plane to Singapore while our marriage burned behind you. The harshness made Liam flinch, but Harriet refused to soften it. He needed to understand the stakes, needed to feel the weight of what he was taking on. I deserve that, he said quietly. I deserve much worse, but Harriet, I'm not the same person I was 12 years ago. I built my empire. Mateo Technologies is worth $3 billion now. I have money and success and everything I thought I wanted back then. And it's all hollow. Every achievement, every acquisition. None of it means anything because I'm completely alone in it. That's not my problem to solve, Harriet said. I know, Liam replied. I'm not asking you to solve it. I'm just trying to explain that I learned the lesson you tried to teach me 12 years ago. Achievement without connection is just expensive loneliness. Success without people who matter is just a very comfortable prison. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. I want to know my children. I want to be present, genuinely present, not just when it's convenient, but all the time. In the boring moments and the difficult ones, not just the highlights. Harriet studied him, looking for cracks in the facade. For signs, this was performance rather than genuine transformation. If we do this, she said slowly, there are non-negotiable ground rules. You don't get to show up sporadically and call yourself a father. You commit completely and consistently, or you don't. Commit at all. I won't have you disrupting their lives with half measures or good intentions that evaporate when work gets demanding. Whatever it takes, Liam said. I'll do whatever it takes. We start slow. Harriet continued. Supervised visits. You meet them properly, spend time with them, but I'm there. You earn their trust, gradually, not through gifts or grand gestures, but through showing up consistently, even when it's mundane or difficult, even when they're cranky or boring or just normal children having normal days. Agreed. And Liam. Harriet's voice went very quiet, very serious. If you hurt them, if you let them down, or disappear, or prove yourself unreliable, you'll never get another chance. I will make absolutely certain you understand the cost of breaking their hearts. Do you understand me? I do, he said, and the first won't. I swear to you, I won't let them down. Harriet wanted to believe him. Part of her, the part that remembered loving him, wanted to take him at his word. But the part that had survived his betrayal, that had built a life from rubble, remained skeptical. Actions, she said, not words. Show me you've changed. Prove you can sustain commitment to something beyond quarterly earnings. Then maybe, possibly, we'll see about building something beyond supervised visits. When can I meet them? Liam asked. Properly, I mean. Not at a reception where everything is performance and small talk. Harriet checked her watch. They're with Elena now. I could call them. We could meet at the park near here this afternoon if you're available. I'm available, Liam said immediately. I'll cancel everything. Today is entirely about them. Don't make promises yet, Harriet warned. You don't know what you're agreeing to. Children are complicated. They'll test you in ways board meetings never have. They'll ask impossible questions and see right through diplomatic answers. Are you ready for that? No, Liam admitted. But I want to try anyway. Fair enough. Harriet pulled out her phone and texted Elena. Bring the twins to Volunteer Park in 2 hours. There's someone they need to meet properly. Elena's response came immediately. Are you sure about this? Harriet typed back. No, but they deserve the choice. Before we continue with how this first meeting changes everything, I need to know you're still with me. If you're invested in whether Liam can prove himself worthy of being a father, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who believes in second chances or someone who thinks some mistakes are unforgivable. Either way, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck's stories because part 2 is going to test everything we think we know about forgiveness, family, and whether people can genuinely change. Thank you for being here. Your engagement means everything. Part 2, 9,000 words. 2 hours felt both too long and not long enough. Harriet spent them in her office, ostensibly reviewing scores for upcoming performances, but actually staring at the same page while her mind spun through every possible outcome of the meeting ahead. Liam had left to get coffee, giving her space, but his presence lingered in the office like cologne. At 1:55, Harriet walked to Volunteer Park. The afternoon was crisp, autumn in Seattle doing its best impression of perfection. Golden leaves scattered across pathways. Families occupied benches and playground equipment. The kind of normalcy that felt surreal given what was about to happen. Liam was already there, standing near a bench and visibly nervous. The billionaire who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals looked terrified of meeting two 11-year-olds. He'd changed out of his suit into jeans and a sweater, probably trying to seem more approachable, more dad-like. The effort was touching in its transparency. "Hey," Harriet said, approaching him. "They'll be here in a few minutes. Elena just texted that they're parking." "Thank you for this," Liam said. "I know it can't be easy for you." "It's not about easy," Harriet replied. "It's about what's right. They deserve to know their father, even if the circumstances are complicated." Before Liam could respond, Harriet saw Elena's car pull into the parking lot, watched as the twins climbed out, spotted her, and came running across the grass with the boundless energy of children who hadn't yet learned to be weighed down by complicated adult situations. "Mama," Nora called out. "Elena said we're meeting someone important." "You are," Harriet confirmed, catching her daughter in a brief hug, before turning to include both twins. "Remember the man from last night? From my premiere reception? The one who knew you before," Julian said, his analytical mind already connecting pieces. "The one who upset you." "He didn't upset me exactly," Harriet said carefully. "He surprised me. And yes, he knew me before you were born. His name is Liam Mateo, and there's something important you need to know about him." She paused, aware that what came next would reshape their understanding of their own story. "This is your biological father. When our marriage ended 12 years ago, I didn't know I was pregnant with you. By the time I found out, he was already gone, living in another country. I made the decision not to tell him because I wanted to build you a stable life without complications. But he's here now, and he'd like to meet you properly if you're comfortable with that." The twins turned to look at Liam with identical expressions of assessment. He stood a few feet away, giving them space, his hands in his pockets and his expression open and vulnerable in a way Harriet had never seen before. "Hi," Liam said quietly. "I know this is strange. I know you have every reason to be uncomfortable or angry or confused. I just want you to know that finding out about you is the best thing that's happened to me in 12 years, and I'd very much like to get to know you if you'll let me." "Why didn't you know about us?" Nora asked, direct as always. "Where were you?" "I was in Singapore," Liam said, "building a technology company. Your mom and I had ended our marriage because I made a choice to prioritize that company over our relationship. I asked her to wait for me while I relocated for 5 years, and she very rightly said no. She left, filed for divorce, and I signed the papers because I thought respecting her decision was the right thing to do. I didn't know she was pregnant." "Did you look for her?" Julian asked. "After Singapore, did you try to find Mama?" Liam's face showed pain at the question. "No, I didn't. I thought she'd moved on, built a new life, and that reaching out would be selfish. I thought the kindest thing I could do was leave her alone. I was wrong about that, just like I was wrong about so many things back then. So you chose work over her," Nora summarized. "And then you didn't even try to get her back. And now you want to be our dad, even though you weren't there when we were babies, or learning to walk, or any of the important stuff." The bluntness of it made Harriet wince, but she didn't intervene. Her children deserved honest answers, and Liam needed to understand exactly what he was asking to be part of. "Yes," Liam said simply, "I chose wrong. I chose my company over the person I loved most in the world, and I've regretted it every single day since. I can't change the past. I can't go back and make different choices or be there for your first steps or first words. But if you're willing to give me a chance, I'd like to be here for everything that comes next." The twins exchanged one of their silent twin communications. Harriet had learned not to interrupt these moments. They were making a decision together, weighing information in whatever mysterious way siblings who'd shared a womb managed to do. "We'll think about it," Nora announced finally. "But you should know we already have a really good life. Mama made sure of that. We have school and friends and music and everything we need. So if you're going to be part of it, you have to add something, not take anything away or make things complicated. That's more than fair," Liam said. "What would adding something look like to you?" "Not presents," Julian interjected immediately. "Rich people always think presents fix things. Mama taught us that things don't matter as much as time and attention." "So you want time and attention," Liam said. "What else?" "We want you to care about what we care about," Nora added. "Not just show up for the big stuff like recitals and competitions. We want you to be interested in the boring things too. The homework and the practice sessions, and the random thoughts we have about why Beethoven's Ninth Symphony is actually about human connection, not just joy. Liam's expression shifted to something that looked like genuine interest. You think the Ninth is about connection? Obviously, Nora said. The whole structure builds toward the final movement where individual voices become collective. It's literally about how humans need each other to create something transcendent. Anyone who thinks it's just about joy is missing the point. I never thought about it that way, Liam admitted, but you're absolutely right. The architecture of the piece supports that interpretation. And suddenly they were off, Nora explaining her theory about Beethoven's compositional choices while Liam listened with what appeared to be genuine fascination. Julian hovered on the edges of the conversation, watching his sister charm their biological father with music theory while maintaining his own careful distance. What about you? Liam asked Julian after Nora paused for breath. Your mom said you're interested in mathematics and music. How do those connect for you? Julian considered the question with his characteristic thoughtfulness. Everything is ratios and patterns, he said finally. Music is just math that sounds beautiful. Like, a perfect fifth is a 3-to-2 frequency ratio. A major scale follows a specific pattern of whole and half steps. Even rhythm is division of time into proportional units. People think math and art are opposites, but they're really the same language expressed differently. That's brilliant, Liam said, and he sounded like he meant it. Have you studied the Fibonacci sequence in relation to musical composition? How the golden ratio appears in classical structures? Julian's eyes lit up in a way Harriet recognized. The look he got when someone understood his obsessions. Some, he admitted, but not as much as I want to. Most kids my age think I'm weird for caring about that stuff. You're not weird, Liam said. You're intellectually curious, which is one of the best things a person can be. I have some books about mathematical patterns in music if you'd be interested. And there's a lecture series at the university about the intersection of art and mathematics. We could attend together if you want. Really? Julian asked, his skepticism warring with hope. Really, Liam confirmed. If it's okay with your mom. Both twins turned to look at Harriet, who'd been watching this exchange from a careful distance with Elena beside her. What do you think? Harriet asked them. Would you like to spend more time with him? Get to know him better? Maybe, Nora said cautiously, but slowly, like not moving in together or anything dramatic, just visits and talking and seeing if he's actually serious about this. That sounds very reasonable. Harriet agreed, then addressed Liam. You can visit once a week to start. Sunday afternoons. We'll have dinner at my house. You can spend time with the twins, and we'll see how it goes. If everyone feels comfortable after a few weeks, we can increase the frequency. I'll be there, Liam said immediately. Every Sunday, whatever time works for you. 5 o'clock, Harriet said. And Liam, if you commit to this, you show up even when work is demanding or travel is complicated. You don't get to cancel because something more important came up. Understood, he said. They are the most important thing. I promise you that. The afternoon stretched longer than Harriet had planned. Liam asked the twins questions about school and friends and their interests. They answered with varying degrees of openness. Nora warming to him quickly, Julian maintaining cautious distance, but gradually engaging when the conversation turned to topics he cared about. By the time Elena announced she needed to take the twins home for homework, 3 hours had passed. The autumn light had shifted to gold. The park had emptied of most families, and something tentative but real had been established between a father and the children he'd never known existed. I'll see you Sunday, Liam said, as the twins prepared to leave with Elena. 5 o'clock. What should we call you? Nora asked suddenly. Like, is it weird to call you Dad when you're basically a stranger? Call me Liam for now, he said. If we get to a place where Dad feels right, you can switch. But I don't need a title. I just need the chance to know you. After they left, Harriet and Liam stood in the cooling afternoon, the weight of what had just happened settling between them. They're extraordinary, Liam said quietly. Everything about them. You did that. You raised them to be confident and curious and unafraid to speak their minds. I raised them to know their worth, Harriet corrected, so they'd never accept less than they deserve from anyone, including you. Especially me, Liam agreed. I won't let them down, Harriet. I know you don't believe me yet, but I'll prove it. Time will tell. Harriet said, It always does. That first Sunday dinner was awkward in the way all forced family gatherings are. Liam arrived at 4:55 holding flowers for Harriet that she accepted with cool politeness and a bottle of sparkling cider for the twins that made Nora roll her eyes at the obvious attempt to win favor. But by the time dinner ended, something had shifted. Liam had asked Julian to show him his latest piano composition, had listened to Nora's passionate explanation of her violin teacher's new technique for vibrato, had helped clear dishes without being asked, and engaged in a surprisingly heated debate with Julian about whether music theory was prescriptive or descriptive. This became the pattern. Every Sunday at 5, Liam showed up. Sometimes he brought groceries and cooked dinner. Sometimes Harriet had already prepared something and he helped serve. The twins gradually relaxed around him, testing boundaries and asking increasingly personal questions. "Why did you really choose work over Mama?" Nora asked 3 weeks in, her directness cutting through polite dinner conversation. Like, what was so important about a company that you'd give up love for it? Liam set down his fork, giving the question the serious consideration it deserved. "I was terrified of failing," he said, honestly. "My father had built a successful business and lost everything when I was 12. I watched it destroy him. So when I started my own company, I became obsessed with never experiencing that kind of loss. When the crisis came, when investors were pulling out and everything I'd built was collapsing, I panicked. I thought if I lost the company, I'd lose myself. I'd become my father." "But you did lose something," Julian observed. "You lost Mama and us, even though you didn't know about us. So you were afraid of one kind of loss and created a different one." "Exactly right," Liam said. "I was so focused on avoiding my father's mistakes that I made completely different mistakes with the same devastating results. I chose the wrong thing to protect. Would you make the same choice now?" Nora pressed. "If you had to choose between us and your company." "There's no choice," Liam said immediately. "You, every time. The company's successful and I'm proud of what we've built, but it's just a company. It's replaceable. You aren't." Harriet watched this exchange from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching Liam engage with her children, their children, with honesty instead of platitudes. It was exactly what she'd hoped for, and exactly what terrified her. Because if he proved himself genuine, if he became someone the twins could rely on, then Harriet would have to examine her own carefully constructed walls and decide whether they were still protection or had become prison. The weeks turned into months. Liam never missed a Sunday. When work required him to travel, he scheduled trips around their dinners. When a major deal demanded his attention on a Sunday afternoon, he delegated it to his executive team. He video called the twins 3 times a week, conversations that started awkwardly but gradually became natural. 6 weeks in, Julian started calling him Dad. Not consistently, and always with a slight self-consciousness, but the word appeared. 2 weeks after that, Nora followed. Harriet watched her children claim this man as their father, and felt complicated emotions she didn't have names for. Relief that they had another parent, fear that he might disappoint them, grief for the years they'd lost, and underneath it all, something dangerous that felt almost like forgiveness. 4 months after that first park meeting, Liam made an announcement during Sunday dinner. The twins were arguing about whose turn it was to choose the movie for family film night, a tradition that had emerged organically over the months. Harriet was making popcorn. The domesticity of it all felt both wonderful and terrifying. "I have some news," Liam said, and something in his tone made everyone stop and pay attention. "I've been thinking about the commute between Seattle and San Francisco. Flying back and forth every week is sustainable, but it means I miss a lot of the small moments. The Tuesday afternoon normalcy, the homework help, the random weeknight dinners. Where are you going with this?" Harriet asked carefully, her defensive instincts activating. "I'm opening a Seattle office for Mateo Technologies," Liam said. "It'll be the new headquarters, actually. I'm relocating permanently. If that's okay with everyone." The twins erupted into excited chatter. "Does that mean you'll be here all the time? More than just Sundays? Can we have dinner on Wednesdays too? What about weekends?" Liam laughed at their enthusiasm. "As often as your mom is comfortable with. I'm not trying to overstep or disrupt what you've built. I just want to be more present, more available. Not just for scheduled visits, but for the spontaneous moments too." Harriet felt her heart rate increase. This was a major commitment, not just to the twins but to being part of their daily lives, to being unavoidable and constant and there. "When can we see you?" became Where do you want to eat dinner? The careful distance she'd maintained would become impossible. That's a significant life change, she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. When were you planning to do this? I've already started the process, Liam admitted. I've been looking at properties for the past month. Office space and a house. Somewhere close to you, but not so close I'm intrusive. I'm hoping to be settled within 2 months. You've been planning this for a month and didn't mention it? Harriet's voice carried an edge now. I wanted to make sure it was viable before I said anything, Liam explained. I didn't want to promise something I couldn't deliver, but the logistics are worked out. My executive team is supportive. The relocation is happening. I just needed to make sure you were okay with it before I finalized anything. What if I'm not okay with it? Harriet challenged. What if I think it's too much too fast? Then I'll slow down, Liam said immediately. I'll keep the San Francisco office as headquarters and just visit more frequently. But Harriet, I'm not asking for anything except the opportunity to be nearby, to be available when they need me, to be an actual father instead of a weekend visitor. Harriet looked at her children, who were watching this exchange with hope written clearly across their faces. Looked at Liam, who'd spent 4 months proving himself reliable and consistent. Looked at the life she'd built that suddenly felt less like protection and more like limitation. Do it, she said. Move here. Be close to them. They deserve that. What she didn't say, what she barely admitted to herself, was that maybe she deserved it too. Maybe she deserved to see what happened when someone who'd hurt her actually did the work to become better. Maybe she deserved the possibility of something more than contentment and survival. That night, after Liam left and the twins were asleep, Elena found Harriet in the kitchen staring at nothing while herbal tea went cold in front of her. You're thinking very loudly, Elena observed, pouring herself tea and settling at the table. Want to share or should I just guess? He's moving here, Harriet said, opening a Seattle office. He'll be here 3 weeks out of every month instead of just Sundays. And how do you feel about that? I don't know, Harriet admitted, terrified, hopeful, both simultaneously. He's been everything I hoped he'd be as a father, consistent, present, genuinely engaged. The twins adore him. This should be good news. But, Elena prompted, but it means I can't keep him at arm's length anymore, Harriet said. I can't pretend this is just about parenting when he's going to be a permanent fixture in our daily lives. I'm going to have to actually examine what I feel about him beyond just whether he's good for the children. And what do you feel about him? Elena asked gently. Harriet was quiet for a long moment, staring into tea like it held answers. I don't hate him anymore, she finally said. I did for a long time. But watching him with Nora and Julian, seeing how he's changed, how he prioritizes them over everything else, it's hard to maintain hatred in the face of genuine transformation. That's not what I asked, Elena said. I know what you asked, Harriet replied. I'm just not ready to answer it honestly. Why not? Because the answer scares me, Harriet admitted. Because the answer means I might have to risk something I swore I'd never risk again. My heart, my trust, my belief that someone can choose me and stay chosen. He broke all of that 12 years ago. What if he breaks it again? What if he doesn't? Elena countered. What if he's actually become the man you needed him to be back then? Are you going to punish him forever for who he was, or give him credit for who he's become? It was the question Harriet had been avoiding for months, the one that kept her awake at night and distracted during the day. She'd been so focused on protecting herself and the twins that she hadn't considered what she might be protecting herself from. Not just pain, but possibility. I don't know if I can do it, Harriet whispered. I don't know if I can be that vulnerable again. Let someone close enough to devastate me. You don't have to decide tonight, Elena said. But eventually you'll have to decide something. Living in this limbo, not moving forward, not letting go, that's just another kind of prison. You survived what he did to you. You built an empire from nothing. You raised 2 incredible children alone. You're strong enough to risk your heart again if you choose to. The question is whether you're brave enough. The words settled over Harriet like a challenge. She thought surviving was the brave part, building a life from rubble, becoming successful despite devastation. But maybe staying safe was actually the coward's choice. Maybe real courage meant risking pain for the possibility of something better than mere survival. 6 weeks later, Liam closed on a house in Capitol Hill, a beautiful craftsman-style home with enough bedrooms for the twins to have their own spaces when they stayed over. He invited them over for a walkthrough before he moved in, wanting them to feel comfortable in what would become their second home. The house was perfect. Warm hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves. A kitchen that opened to a backyard with space for a garden. Large windows that let in the Seattle light. Rooms waiting to be filled with life and laughter in the chaos of children. "This will be your room, Nora," Liam said, opening a door to reveal a space painted in warm grays with built-in shelving perfect for her growing book collection. "We can decorate it however you want. Paint, furniture, everything. I want it to feel like yours." Nora's eyes went wide as she stepped inside. "This is mine? Really mine? Not just a guest room I use sometimes. Really yours," Liam confirmed. "I want you to feel like this is your home too. Not just my house where you visit, but a place that belongs to you." "I love it," Nora breathed, already imagining possibilities. Julian's room was painted a soft blue with space for a desk, and most importantly, a piano. Not an expensive grand piano, but a quality upright that suggested Liam had done research and asked questions about what Julian would actually want, rather than what looked impressive. "For practicing when you're here," Liam explained. "If you want to. No pressure, but I thought having your own instrument might be nice." "This is really cool," Julian admitted, running his fingers over the keys. "Like, actually thoughtful instead of just expensive." "I'm learning that there's a difference," Liam said with a slight smile. "Your mom has been teaching me that what matters is attention, not price tags." After the house tour, the twins ran outside to explore the backyard while Harriet and Liam stood in the kitchen. The space between them charged with something neither was quite ready to name. "This is really happening," Harriet said quietly. "You're really here. In Seattle. Building a life close to them. I told you I would," Liam replied. "I know it took months to prove it, but I meant every word. They're my priority. This is where I need to be." Before Harriet could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from the conservatory about an upcoming performance. She glanced at it, then back at Liam, aware that they were alone for the first time in months. Every other interaction had been buffered by the twins' presence, or Elena's knowing observations, or the public nature of parks and restaurants. "Can I ask you something?" Liam said quietly. "Not about the twins. About you. About us. That depends on the question." "Are you happy?" Liam asked. "Beyond being a mother, beyond your success, beyond everything you've built. Are you actually happy, Harriet?" The question caught her off guard, cutting through small talk to something vulnerable and true. "I'm content," she replied carefully. "I have work that matters, children I love, a life I built from nothing. That's more than most people get." "Content isn't happy," Liam observed. "Maybe not," Harriet admitted, "but it's stable, and after 12 years of fighting for stability, I'll take it over the chaos of chasing happiness." "What if you could have both?" Liam asked. "What if happiness didn't have to be chaotic?" Harriet met his eyes, seeing the question beneath the question. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've been content for so long I'm not sure I remember what happiness feels like, or if I'm even capable of it anymore." "You're capable of it," Liam said softly. "I've watched you with the twins, the way you light up when they play music, the way you laugh at their ridiculous arguments. That's happiness, even if you don't recognize it." "That's different," Harriet countered. "That's maternal love. That's safe." "And what would unsafe happiness look like?" Liam pressed. Before Harriet could answer, the twins came bursting back inside, full of plans for the garden and demands to know when they could move their things into their new rooms. The moment dissolved, but the question lingered between them. Over the next months, Liam settled into Seattle life. His office opened with minimal fanfare. He hired local staff. He became a regular at the twins' school events, sitting beside Harriet at conferences and performances. To the outside world, they probably looked like a family. Divorced, but amicable. CO parenting successfully. But inside, Harriet felt walls she'd spent 12 years building begin to crack. It started small. She'd catch herself smiling at something Liam said during a Sunday dinner. Looking forward to his presence, not just for the twins' sake, but for her own. Noticing how he'd changed. More patient, more present, more willing to be vulnerable than the man she'd known 12 years ago. 8 months after Liam moved to Seattle, they fell into a routine. Sunday dinners became Wednesday dinners too, then Friday pizza nights. Liam attended the twins' performances and games. He helped with homework and school projects. He became woven into the fabric of their daily lives, not just a visitor, but a presence. And Harriet found herself having to confront feelings she'd been carefully not examining. One evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Harriet and Liam were cleaning up the kitchen together, moving around each other with the ease that comes from repetition. He washed dishes. She dried, the kind of domestic choreography that shouldn't feel intimate but somehow did. "I've been thinking," Harriet said, her voice barely above a whisper, "about what you asked, about happiness." Liam went very still beside her, hands paused in soapy water. And I think maybe I'm ready to try," Harriet continued, not rushing into anything, not recreating what we had, but trying to see if there's something there beyond shared children and old history, seeing if we can build something new that doesn't carry all the weight of what broke us before. The smile that spread across Liam's face was incandescent. "Really? You mean it?" "Really," Harriet confirmed. "But Liam, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person I was 12 years ago. I'm harder, more guarded, less willing to ignore red flags or accept less than I deserve. If we do this and you hurt me again, there won't be another chance. Not ever." "I understand," Liam said seriously, "and I promise you, I won't waste this opportunity. I've spent 12 years learning to be someone worthy of you. I'm not going to throw that away." He moved closer, carefully, asking permission with his eyes before taking her hand. "Can I take you to dinner? Just us. A real date where we figure out who we are now, not who we were." "I'd like that," Harriet replied, and meant it. Their first date happened 2 weeks later. Elena stayed with the twins, who were thrilled at the idea of their parents going out like grown-ups, as Nora put it. Harriet spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing a dress, rejecting options for being too casual or too formal, or too much like she was trying too hard. "You look beautiful," Liam said when he picked her up, and the genuine appreciation in his voice made her feel like she'd chosen correctly. The restaurant was quiet and intimate. French cuisine and candlelight, the kind of place for serious conversations, not casual catching up. They ordered wine and talked for 3 hours, about everything and nothing, who they'd become in their years apart, what success meant now versus then, the lessons learned through heartbreak and building separate lives. "This feels different than before," Harriet observed sometime during the second hour, "more grounded, less desperate. We're different than before." Liam agreed. "We're not two young people trying to prove something to the world. We're adults who've survived heartbreak and built lives and are choosing carefully, intentionally, to see if those lives might fit together." "What do you dream about now?" Harriet asked. "Not business goals or acquisition targets. What do you dream about when you let yourself want things beyond success?" Liam was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in his glass. "I dream about being worthy of a second chance," he said finally. "I dream about Nora and Julian growing up, knowing their father chose them consistently, not just once, but every single day. And I dream about you looking at me someday without that guardedness in your eyes, without wondering if I'm going to choose wrong again." "And what if the guardedness never goes away completely?" Harriet asked. "What if I'm always going to have some walls up because that's who survival made me?" "Then I'll love you anyway," Liam said simply, "walls and all. Because those walls are evidence of your strength. They kept you safe when I failed to. They're not flaws to be fixed. They're part of who you've become." The honesty of it cracked something open in Harriet's chest, not breaking, but making space for something new. They talked until the restaurant staff began giving pointed looks about closing time. Walked to the car holding hands. The physical connection felt both familiar and new. When Liam drove her home and walked her to the door, they stood on her porch in the soft glow of the outdoor light. "Can I kiss you?" Liam asked quietly. Harriet's heart hammered against her ribs. This was a threshold. Once crossed, they couldn't go back to pretending this was just about co-parenting. "Yes," she whispered. The kiss was tender and careful, nothing rushed or demanding, just two people rediscovering each other after 12 years of absence. When they pulled apart, Harriet was smiling despite herself. "Let's take this slow," she said. "Really slow. I need to know this isn't just nostalgia or guilt or wanting to recreate what we had. As slow as you need." Liam agreed. "I'm not going anywhere." That became his constant refrain. "I'm not going anywhere." Through the months that followed as they carefully, slowly began dating while co-parenting, through dinners and museum visits and concerts where Harriet performed and Liam sat in the audience with a different meaning than that first night. The twins adapted with remarkable ease. "Are you boyfriend and girlfriend?" Nora asked one Sunday morning when Liam showed up for breakfast looking rumpled in yesterday's clothes, having clearly spent the night. "We're figuring it out," Harriet replied honestly. "How do you feel about that?" "Good," Nora said. "You smile more now. Like real smiles, not just polite ones." Julian's assessment was more pragmatic. "Does this mean you're getting married again?" "Not right now," Harriet said. "We're taking things slow, making sure we're building something real and lasting instead of rushing into promises we might not be ready to keep." "Good," Julian said. "Slow is better. Slow means it'll last." 5 months into dating, Liam had to take an emergency work trip to Singapore. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. A major deal requiring his physical presence for 3 days. He came to Harriet with visible conflict in his expression. "I have to go to Singapore," he said, and watched her entire body tense. "I know what this looks like. I know it probably triggers every bad memory you have, but this deal affects 400 jobs. If I don't go, people lose their livelihoods." Harriet felt old fear rise up. The memory of him choosing work, choosing to leave, choosing wrong, but she forced herself to examine the present moment instead of reacting from past pain. "How long?" she asked. 3 days, Liam said. "I leave tomorrow morning, back Friday afternoon. But Harriet, if you need me to stay, I will. If this is a test of whether I've actually changed, I'll choose you. I'll send my VP instead and accept whatever consequences come." "Go," Harriet said, the word costing her more than she wanted to admit. "But we video call every night. And Liam, you come back. You don't use this as an excuse to fall back into old patterns where work becomes more important than us." "I promise," he said. "Every night. And I'll be back Friday, not Saturday, not when it's convenient. Friday afternoon, I'll come straight to your house from the airport." The 3 days felt longer than they should have. But Liam kept his word. Nightly video calls where he looked exhausted but present. Texts throughout the day with pictures from Singapore and updates on the deal. He landed Friday at 2 and was at her door by 3, still in his travel clothes, looking rumpled and tired, but there. "I told you I'd come back," he said when she opened the door. Harriet felt something release in her chest. Some fear she'd been carrying that this would be the moment he reverted. That work would reclaim him and she'd discover his transformation had been temporary. "You did. You came back. I will always come back to you," Liam said. "Always. For the rest of my life, if you'll let me." "How do I trust that?" Harriet asked, voicing the fear she'd been carrying. "How do I trust that this time is different? One trip at a time," Liam replied. "One promise kept at a time. I can't erase 12 years of broken trust with words. I can only prove through consistent action that I've changed, that you and the twins are my priority above everything else, including billion-dollar deals and company expansion, and everything I used to think mattered most." Harriet pulled him inside and kissed him, deeper than before, the kiss of someone choosing to trust despite fear, choosing possibility over protection. The twins came home an hour later to find them asleep on the couch, Liam's arm around Harriet and her head on his shoulder. The twins exchanged knowing looks and tiptoed past, giving their parents the space to rest. 7 months into dating, it was Thanksgiving. Harriet hosted at her house. Elena and her family. Liam's mother, who'd flown in from San Francisco for her first meeting with the grandchildren she'd never known existed. The atmosphere was complicated, joy mixed with old pain and new possibilities. Liam's mother, Patricia, was elegant and reserved. She looked at the twins with undisguised emotion, then at Harriet with something that might have been guilt. "I didn't know," Patricia said when they had a moment alone in the kitchen. "Liam never told me you were pregnant. I would have reached out. I would have helped." "He didn't know either," Harriet replied. "I made the choice not to tell him. That's on me, not you." "Why?" Patricia asked. Not judgment, genuine curiosity. Why keep his children from him? "Because when I found out I was pregnant, I was alone in a city where I knew no one, trying to figure out how to survive," Harriet explained. "Your son had chosen his company over our marriage. He'd asked me to wait 5 years while he built his empire. And I decided I didn't want my children growing up wondering if they were important enough for their father to show up. I wanted to give them certainty even if it meant being the only parent. I'm sorry for what he did to you, Patricia said quietly. I raised him to value achievement, to equate success with worth. I think I taught him the wrong lessons about what actually matters. He's learning different lessons now. Harriet said, he's been an extraordinary father to Nora and Julian. Consistent and present and genuinely engaged. That's what matters. After dinner, the twins performed for the family, a duet they'd composed together. Nora on violin, Julian on piano. The music was complex and beautiful, showing both technical skill and emotional depth. Liam's mother wept openly, watching her grandchildren create art. They're so talented, Patricia whispered to Harriet. You did that. You gave them confidence and skill and the belief that they could create beauty. We did that, Harriet corrected, nodding toward Liam. He might not have been there for the first 11 years, but he's here now. That counts for something. Later, after everyone had left and the twins were in bed, Liam and Harriet cleaned up together. The familiar choreography of shared domestic tasks. Thank you, Liam said, for including my mother, for being gracious when you had every right to be cold, for building bridges instead of walls. She's their grandmother, Harriet replied. They deserve that relationship, and your mother seems genuinely remorseful about what happened between us. She is, Liam confirmed. I told her everything last month, about Singapore, about asking you to wait, about the divorce. She was horrified, said she'd taught me to value all the wrong things. Did she? Harriet asked. Teach you wrong values? She taught me that achievement was the highest good, Liam said. That success meant security, that building something impressive was how you proved your worth. And for a long time, I believed her. But you taught me something different. You taught me that connection is what actually matters, that showing up is more important than showing off, that love requires daily choosing, not grand gestures. He took her hand, his expression serious. I want to ask you something, not tonight necessarily, but soon. I want to know where this is going, whether you can see a future where we're not just co-parents who happen to be dating, but actually partners building a life together. Ask me in 6 months. Harriet heard herself say, What? Ask me in 6 months what our future looks like. Harriet said, I need more time to be certain this is real and lasting, that we're both capable of sustaining this beyond the honeymoon phase of rediscovery. Ask me in 6 months, and I'll have an answer. Will it be the answer I'm hoping for? Liam asked quietly. Ask me in 6 months and find out, Harriet replied with a small smile. 1 year after that concert hall meeting, Harriet had another premiere. This time, a piano concerto she composed specifically with Julian in mind. He was too young to perform it yet, but in 5 years when he was ready, this piece would be waiting for him. The concert hall was packed, critics and donors and music lovers filling every seat. But this time when Harriet walked onto stage, Liam's presence in the audience didn't make her armor crack. It made her stronger. He sat in the 5th row again, but now Nora and Julian sat beside him. Elena and Patricia filled out the row, her family, chosen and biological, supporting her. The performance was triumphant, the kind that gets written about in major publications and discussed in music theory classes. When it ended, the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. At the reception afterward, Harriet and Liam stood together, his arm around her waist, comfortable in public. A music journalist approached, asking about the inspiration for the piece. What inspired this concerto? The journalist asked. The journey from broken to whole, Harriet replied. From survival to actually living, from believing love was impossible to learning it just requires the right person at the right time. Is it autobiographical? The journalist pressed. All art is autobiographical if you're being honest, Harriet said with a slight smile. Later, when the crowd thinned, Liam led her to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Seattle spread out below them, lights twinkling in the darkness. I have something for you, Liam said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Harriet's breath caught. They'd agreed. 6 months. It had only been 1 year total. But when he opened the box, it wasn't a ring. It was a key. This is a key to my house, Liam said. You already have one for emergencies, but this one is symbolic. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. We've both learned that love isn't about grand gestures or impulsive proposals. It's about daily choosing. Then what is this? Harriet asked, confused. This is me asking you to build a life with me, Liam explained. Intentionally, thoughtfully. When you're ready, combine our homes, merge our lives, create something new that honors who we've both become. No timeline, no pressure, just commitment to the journey. Harriet took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. Ask me the other question, she said quietly. What other question? The one you're afraid to ask. Liam's vulnerability showed in his expression. Will you marry me? Not today, not next month, but someday. When you're ready, will you let me be your husband again? Let me spend the rest of my life proving that people can change, can learn, can become worthy of second chances. Harriet was quiet for a long moment, looking at this man who'd broken her and then spent 2 years rebuilding trust brick by careful brick, who'd become an extraordinary father, who'd moved his entire life to be present, who'd chosen them consistently, even when it was difficult. Ask me in 4 months, she said. 4 months from today, ask me again and I'll say yes. Really? Liam's face transformed with hope. Really? Harriet confirmed. I need 4 more months of this, of daily choosing, of proving to myself that this is real and sustainable and built to last. And then, ask me again. I can wait 4 months, Liam said. I can wait 4 years if that's what you need. 4 months will be enough, Harriet replied. And then she kissed him, public and passionate and committal. From inside the reception hall, the twins watched through the glass doors. Nora grinned at her brother. I think they're getting married. Eventually, Julian agreed. But they're taking it slow. Good, Nora said. Slow means it'll last. 4 months later, on a Saturday morning in March, Liam found Harriet in her garden. She was planting herbs, dirt under her fingernails and her hair escaping its ponytail. He knelt beside her in the soil, not caring about his expensive jeans. It's been 4 months, he said. I know, Harriet replied, not looking up from her planting. Will you marry me, Harriet George? Will you let me be your husband and partner? Will you build a life with me where we choose each other every day, in the boring moments and the difficult ones, not just the highlights? Harriet set down her trowel and finally met his eyes. Yes, she said simply, yes to all of it. The wedding happened 2 months later, small and intimate. Just 40 guests in the conservatory garden where Harriet taught. The twins were part of the ceremony, performing their duet while guests arrived. Elena stood as maid of honor, Liam's business partner as best man. The vows were simple and honest, not traditional promises but personal ones. 12 years ago, we made promises we weren't equipped to keep, Harriet said. Today I'm making different promises. I promise to choose you daily. I promise to communicate when things are hard. I promise to build with you, not just lean on you. I promise to let you love our children. And I promise to let you love me, even when I'm scared. I promise to never again choose anything over us. Liam replied. I promise to show up, especially when it's mundane. I promise to earn your trust every single day. I promise to love our children with everything I have. And I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that people can change, can learn, can become worthy of second chances. The twins stepped forward for their own contribution, a short speech they'd written together. We didn't know we needed a dad until we had one, Nora began. And Mama didn't know she could be happy until she let herself try. Julian continued. So we're really glad you were both brave. They finished together. The kiss was met with applause and tears, joy and relief, and the particular satisfaction that comes from watching broken things be rebuilt into something stronger. Weeks later, on a Sunday morning in their combined home, Harriet woke to the sound of music. Julian practicing piano, Nora's violin warming up, Liam in the kitchen making breakfast. The domestic chaos and beauty of family life. She lay there for a moment, just listening. 12 years ago, she'd thought her life ended when Liam left. She'd been wrong. That's when she'd learned to survive, learn to build, learn to become someone strong enough to stand alone. And now, letting him back in, she was learning something new. That survival and thriving weren't opposites. That broken things could be rebuilt. That second chances were real when both people did the work. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Breakfast is ready. Liam called from downstairs. Coming. Harriet called back. She joined her family at the table. 4 people who'd found each other through heartbreak and choice, through daily showing up and consistent love. The twins argued about their practice schedules. Liam mediated while serving eggs. Harriet poured coffee and listened to the beautiful chaos. This was the real music. This was the symphony worth composing. Not the absence of conflict, but the daily work of choosing each other anyway. Not perfection, but presence. Not grand gestures, but showing up for Tuesday morning breakfast and Sunday afternoon normalcy and every ordinary moment in between. They'd broken. They'd survived. They'd rebuilt. And now they were living. Really, truly living. And that's how you rebuild a family from the ashes of betrayal. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of transformation and hard-earned second chances, hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to know that their worst moment doesn't define their entire story. Drop a comment telling me, would you have given Liam a second chance, or was Harriet too forgiving? Subscribe to Mr. Kingsley Luck's stories, because every week we bring you tales of resilience, redemption, and the messy beauty of real love. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, remember that broken things can be rebuilt if both people are willing to do the work. The question is, are you willing?